There is a huge recession on its way, and your personality will dictate whether you come out on top or not. There is a huge recession on its way, and how you're going to come out of it is completely based on what personality you have today. And that personality is based on what habits and routines you do on a consistent day-to-day basis. Truly understanding this concept, which this video will teach you, will put you ahead of everybody else who does not. Bloomberg states a 65% chance recession in 2023. CNBC states that a recession is coming sometime in 2023. Euronews states that over 1/3 of the world will be in some type of economic downturn, also known as a recession, sometime in mid to late 2023. So it's safe to assume that there is economic chaos on its way. But what does that mean for you? That means your job or the jobs of your loved ones, or even your business or the business of your loved ones, is potentially on the chopping block. Recessions and all economic chaos essentially creates an environment where business is just much more difficult, and the odds of failure are just raised in every way. So that means more layoffs, more workplace shuffles, and more problems along the way. Now, we've seen good times and bad times, especially in regards to the economy. We've seen 2008 with the huge housing crisis in North America and in the world. We've seen the 2020 COVID crash, but we've also seen great economic upturns after these downturns. What is actually not constant is the personality that you had at that moment of time and how you reacted to either the chaos or the good surrounding you. And typically how you react to whatever is around you dictates what the outcome becomes. You ever met a person who just recently lost their job, or they just generally lost at something, maybe their business or a competition? They typically fall into these three personality examples. Person one essentially is always positive, but they never get things done, and they slowly become bitter. So they just recently lost their job, but they have that positive mindset. But internally and in terms of their action, they actually don't do anything about it. They just have that positive mindset. And then slowly through time, that positivity with the inaction turns into bitterness. Person two, they're always negative, so they have that negative mindset, but they always get things done, so they have that action behind them. Their mindset does not change, they stay negative, but since they actually do have some action, they actually get things done, and they're marginally better than they were before, but maybe only 5% better. And then there's this personality type, where the individual always positive, has that positive mindset of the first individual, and they always get things done. And this person is always miles ahead of everyone, regardless of what happened. And all of these three examples, they all started in the exact same situation. They lost their job or at something. Although the origin story of these three personalities are the same, the outcomes was vastly different. Where the first individual became bitter and did not move, the second individual kind of improved by 5% from their starting position. The third individual outcompeted everyone completely. This is due to their personality. The personality dictates what their fate becomes, regardless of what happens to them. Now, what exactly is personality? So let's first start by defining habits and routines. Habits are defined as a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. I would personally reword this as a regular practice, conscious or not, during a specific environment. So maybe you have the habit of biting your nails whenever you're nervous at work. That means that you have that cue of stress and of being in the setting of work, and that habit of biting your nails to kind of relieve your stress. And going to routines, routines are defined as a sequence of actions regularly followed. And I would say routines, when compared to habits, routines are more conscious, whereas habits, they're so ingrained within you that you kind of do it on an unconscious basis. And an example of a routine can be your morning routine if you have one, or your evening routine if you have one, or your routine at work. You sit down on your desk, you start with opening your emails, and then you go to opening your socials, and then you go into beginning your work. That could be a routine. Or maybe a routine is you using a visualization booklet, which I'm making a video about, and I'm gonna drop that soon, and it's going to be a very, very powerful tool that you can incorporate in your routine, whether or not if you have one. So subscribe and keep your eye out for that video. So why am I even talking about habits and routines when this whole video is about personality? Let me read you a quote about habits and routines regarding personality. It is often said that we can't change our personality, but we can change our behavior. However, since personality is typically what we do, if we are able to build and sustain new habits through routines, we will in effect change our personality. We are what we repeatedly do, so we all have a chance to change in much more fundamental ways than we may think. So what you consistently do is what your personality becomes. Maybe you have the habit of constantly interrupting people whenever they're speaking. Then your personality turns into that kind of neurotic type of individual. Maybe you have the very annoying habit of speaking when a movie is on. And then you become the individual who's more succumbed to such things, and your personality turns into that. Or maybe you're the person who has the habit who just laughs and shrugs whenever life throws them problem. Your personality will then become a resilient one. Your habits, your routines are the foundation upon which your pyramid of personality is built. And we'll get into how to really understand what your personality is through looking at your habits and routines in a couple sections more. And to kind of hint at a very good way of understanding who you really are is through non-judgmental observance of your day-to-day habits and routines, which will absolutely shine light on everything you have in your life. So what's the relationship between personality and just the economy in general? A fun way to think about it is like this. Personality essentially offers you the tools to work with in the present and the opportunities to use those tools for the future. So what do I mean by that? I basically mean that your personality will essentially dictate how you act in the current cross-section in time that you're in, and it'll also actually conjure up specific opportunities in the future based on what your personality is like. To break that down even further, personality essentially means, do you give up when obstacles arise? Will your personality allow you to think of new solutions to specific problems? Will your personality allow you to stare defeat blankly in the face and just laugh? And touching on the future element of personality and what it can bring you, maybe you're the type of person to come up with those creative solutions, and your boss or whoever you're working with, or maybe your clients, they all recognize that. And with them recognizing that, they recognize that your personality is the type to provide value, not only to them, but to yourself as well. And they will just keep bringing you opportunities and keep bringing you new options in the near future. So let's talk about fate and your personality for this coming year. It's a bit difficult to gauge what your fate will be like this year. And considering that your personality is so unique and it really is not like everybody else's, it's quite difficult to gauge what opportunities will arise for you, regardless of what happens, good or bad. So what the best option is for you to refine your personality, for you to refine the habits and routines you do to increase your odds of success for what will happen in the near future. Even if you lose your job, even if you find a bunch of opportunities, even if you hit rock bottom, your personality will dictate what will actually happen for you and how you can handle this potential energy that life throws at you, whether good or bad. Because like the example that I provided earlier, it doesn't matter how you start, it matters how you take yourself from that starting position into where you want to go. And your personality is a strong indicator of that. Now, this is quite a bit of information, and it's a bit abstract too, so how can you actually apply this to your life? So like I mentioned, you want to be very conscious in a non-judgmental way of what habits and routines you do that make up your personality. We begin with what I call non-judgmental observance, which basically means you need to observe your actions within your day in a very non-judgmental way. Begin your day by having the intention of observing yourself and observing what you do at very key settings in your life. And you have to figure out what those key settings are for yourself. Maybe the key settings is your bedroom, your workplace, your significant other's place, your parents' place, doesn't matter. What are those key settings and how do you act internally and externally in those key settings? And remember, do not judge yourself whenever you're observing your habits and your actions. Just be intentional in observing yourself in a non-judgmental way. Because if you do it in a judgmental way, what happens is you actually exacerbate those habits that you do, whether they are good or bad. Or through judging what you're doing, you may actually corrupt the habit into a negative thing, which is something that nobody wants, including yourself. And this is just observing. You just want to observe what you do. Remember, you're not changing anything right now, you're just observing. Once you practice this type of observance, by, let's say, a week or so, you will essentially have a canvas upon which your personality is made from. And what I mean by that, I mean you essentially can now begin to write down what you do on a day-to-day basis in specific settings and scenarios. Once you have that ready to go, you take a piece of paper, right, and you draw 3 circles. The first circle will be useful, The middle circle will be semi-useful, and the last circle will be problems. In the useful circle, you're essentially gonna write down all habits that you deem productive and good for you. Maybe in that circle, you're gonna write down your morning routine. Maybe you're gonna write down your positive attitude you have. Or maybe you're just gonna write down your discipline. It doesn't matter, just write down the positive habits that you do already and that you have observed in a non-judgmental way. In the problem circle, you're gonna write down all the habits and routines that you do that are very problematic for your life. One very big example, which I personally still kind of do, is going on your phone the second you wake up for a long period of time. And long period of time kind of means like anything more than 15 to 20 minutes. Think of other problem habits you do in your day-to-day life and add that into the problem circle. Now in the semi-useful circle, what you're gonna write down is habits that are essentially, they're not problematic for you, but they're not really good for you either. They're just there. Like for example, it can be a habit of shaking your leg whenever you're nervous, or a little bit of fidgeting and stuff like that. Yeah, they're kind of annoying, but they're not really problematic to you or your life. This essentially is allowing you to create a visual map of the foundation of your personality. And on top of this, since you began observing through a non-judgmental way, you are actually weakening the problematic habits because you are now aware that they actually exist. When you are aware of these things that are subconscious, you have a lot more power on them than you did before. And essentially, this will also allow you to keep a visual tab on what you do and what you can work on. And what you can work on is essentially the things that you need to refine that'll increase your personality's strength and the odds of success for the coming recession and whatever you do. To relate back to your job, essentially, let's say one of your bad habits is quickly going on your phone whenever a problem arises. We all kind of get that habit. Now, this will essentially limit your productivity in your job, and when push comes to shove, when the economy gets hit, your job might be on the chopping block because of this one habit. It may seem very simple and innocent, but compounded, it may be problematic. So you need to really look at these bad habits and maybe even some of the semi-useful habits, and you need to really relate it to your productivity, and you need to see, does it make you sensitive to the coming bad economy? If it does make you sensitive to the bad economy, then you need to try your hardest to remove it altogether. So your personality is just built on the foundation of your daily habits and daily routines, and your personality will dictate what happens to you after the recession is hit. Do you come out on top? Do you stay where you are? Do you go to the bottom? Your personality today will dictate your tomorrow. And it is up to you whether or not you want to have that action to adjust certain facets of your personality. And through the method that I mentioned regarding the non-judgmental observance, you can absolutely do something like that soon. So congratulations, you are now more successful than most people just by understanding and knowing the relation between your personality, your habits, and your faith. And you are now equipped with the tool to allow you to map your personality much faster than anybody else and much more accurately as well through the 3 circles that I was talking about earlier. And if any of this content resonated with you at all, don't forget to subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next one.